Hey Rebel Scum, welcome back to another retrospective series. It's February, it's cold. I couldn't think of a better time to do Hoth, so I'm going to be titling this one The Many Battles of Hoth, because we're going to be looking at all the different Hoth battle playsets. There's not a whole lot, so I should be able to fit this into one segment, vice two last time. I'm going to be focusing exclusively on playsets this time. I know there's a lot of accessory packs, a lot of other kits, vehicles. This could go on forever. So I just want to focus on playsets, and as always, we're going to start where it all began, with the vintage collection, or the original vintage collection. So of course, we're going to start with 1980's Hoth Ice Planet Adventure Set. This one, and I can't really do a close-up of the box here because this is wobbling and it will fall over without me holding it. But this is based on the 1979 Land of the Jawas. Basically, the base here was just painted white, vice the original tan color, and it still has the little alcoves in it, and it still has the working elevator, just like the Sandcrawler had with the character going up into the Sandcrawler. But this time it also switched it out for a different backdrop. You have the AT-AT. I'll show you some of the little fun action shots you get to see there, because I always loved how Kenner used to do that. But my box has seen better days. It's tough for these things to hold up over time. Fortunately, I've been able to keep it somewhere where it hasn't completely fallen apart. But you get that great ages 4 and up shot there as well. In the corner, I always appreciate how they keep consistent with their age. But I'll use the instructions as a guide on this and what was included. But basically, you had this little element here where the guy on the slide here could maneuver, and you could have that pop-up little mark there to knock over another character, simulating a blaster firing at him, which was again consistent on the Land of the Jawas playset, where a Jawa could shoot a droid and the droid would knock over. You could even see the treads are still here on the front here, and I'll give you a little close-up shot. The treads are still here on the front from where the Sandcrawler was, but they kept them for Hoth, even though we didn't have any tank-style vehicles in the Battle of Hoth. You got one of these great little radar dish fires here. I forget what they're called, these little radar turrets. And these ones kind of pivot on a joint here. I don't think they pop up. They do have tire treads on them, but I don't think they pop up like the more modern ones do. When you shoot them, they explode. So these just kind of rotated for your rebel soldiers, and they fit in this nice little groove that was here to begin with, so that was kind of nice. And then, of course, you have the elevator over here that goes up into the AT-AT, so you could have the pilot come out or a snowtrooper, and it will go up and down inside of him. Not much going on inside the back. The only other element of the playset here were these 4 little pegs. Let me see if I can take one out to show you guys. They kind of twist into place, and they just allow your characters to sit in here, which is kind of weird because you don't really see them. I cannot easily do this, and I don't want to force it. Oh wait, here we go. They twist up. So they're just these little foot pegs for the character. That's really it. They don't do much. You can't really see the characters. There's a couple windows, although the AT-AT didn't have windows. But, you know, when you're breezing by Hoth slaughtering rebels, you know, you want to put your arm out the window and blast some tunes. And that was capable on this guy because he did have a couple of windows on the front, including the pilot here. So you could conceivably fit the pilot in here if you wanted to, and you know, have him kind of just sitting there and simulate driving. But I think it would be tight to fit 2 in there. It's really just going to be 1. Like I said, there's not much to show off on the back of this. And then, of course, you have a little Wampa cave here if you wanted to pretend that was a Wampa cave out in the frozen tundra of Hoth. But that is basically the first playset. Like I said, in 1980, this came out with the launch of the Empire Strikes Back series. So it gave you something to put your characters, and then you see all these great little snow speeders and a downed AT-AT in the background. So this really was a great Battle of Hoth scene. They did a lot with cardboard. I love their cardboard sets, even more so than their plastic sets. And this was another great way. You'll see this come back again. They reused this 3 times, this plastic piece here, for other sets besides Land of the Jawas. And there's one other time they used it in Hoth, so we'll get to that segment later. But let's shift gears and move a little bit more forward into 1980 with the Imperial attack base. Moving forward again, we have another playset here. Well, this one is more, I would say, expanding the universe, because we didn't really see any forward operating base for the Imperials. They were purely assault mode. They just kind of went in there and blasted their way into the Rebel base. They didn't dig a trench or set up a defensive position. So this is more imaginative, but I appreciate it. I think it's pretty cool. It's a great Hoth element. There's a lot going on with it. Again, this is another beat up box I have, so I can't really show you, and it's actually missing the side panel, so not much to see there. But that great Kenner artwork where they're showing off the characters and the different functionalities of the battle set. I love these boxes. I love what they used to have on them. It's just they keep trying to bring it back with the vintage collection, which is really appreciated. But just that action shot and the sequence of a person engaging with the characters on there, just very nostalgic, very great look to it. Of course, this one will really pay off if you had a ton of snowtroopers to put in there. But you can see there's a lot going on with this. It has this cannon here mounted that has that great clicking sound, if you could hear it, as you rotate the position back and forth with a peg on there for the character. There's a couple of pegs in here for you to sit some of the characters, but they could pretty much just kind of stand in here without falling over. They'll be okay. You can see some great, I'll give you a close-up, but you can see some footprints in here from the figures running around, which is really neat. And then, of course, they have all the fun functionalities here. And the biggest ones are the exploding archways here. So like that, you could do to make the archway explode when you're, I guess, simulating a laser attack or something into the area, so that's pretty neat. And then it's a quick and easy reset where you can just build that arch again. You could put characters up here, they could stand. And then of course we have another button here. This will help you make a character fly off, basically standing on that pad, just like the Land of the Jawas or Hoth adventure set. You just have that simple flying off the pad there. And then there's one more. If you push this button here, it usually works for me, but it makes the back explode and blow off, and the top falls out of this little command module set here. So that's basically the functionality of that. So that's pretty cool. And then you can reset all these, of course, by just putting the snow back together and live the moment over and over again. So pretty cool, this functionality they have to it. This is one of my more favorite sets, even though it had nothing to do with the movie, just because it builds out the world a little bit more of an imaginative play, and it gives the bad guys a base. So if you wanted to have two opposing sides, as opposed to just a straight assault on the Rebel base. But this is a great set, and again, it's got that sort of cave-like look to it on the entrance here on the back, which I appreciated, and then a lot of little steps. So there's a lot of layering, a lot of dimension going on with it, a lot of fun, a lot of little elements that they worked in to make these sort of just additional little role play or action play aspects of it. So that wraps us for 1980. Let's transition over to 1981 to see what was left in the Hoth battle sets. All right, well now we're in 1981. Moving forward again, we have another Land of the Jawas inspired playset that was reconfigured for the Rebel Command Center adventure set. So we get a nice command center here. So this one was unique. This one came with a couple characters. You had the AT-AT Commander, R2-D2 Periscope, and Luke Skywalker, although he's featured here with a different weapon than he came with. He came with this Black Blaster. This is the one that came with the Rebel Soldier figure. So I love, again, wobbly box. I can't give you a 360, but I love the artwork on this, showing off the features. It's going to be very reminiscent of the Jawa features with the knockoff of the character when you spin him around. And there's less dimension on this than there was on the AT-AT Hoth Adventure set. So why don't I just focus on this set here, because there's not a whole lot going on. I mean, it's the same exact base again, the tread marks, the groove here, and then of course this little bit where mine's a little sticky, but where you make the character pop off. But that's only the really only play dimension. And then with the ice cave this time, they actually have an additional little bit in there where you can see a survival pack and a blaster and some binoculars. I'll give you a close-up of that as well. But that is the only real difference here, is it doesn't have the AT-AT. Now with the Land of the Jawas set, they had the Sandcrawler, and then with the Hoth Adventure set, they had the AT-AT, and it had that elevator. So no elevator this time, just the background Echo base here. So you can see the Falcon, the Snow Speeders, the Tauntaun. So this was really the only Echo base playset they made. In 95, I want to say closer to 97, There was supposed to be a 3D Echo Base playset. It was in the Sears catalog at the time. I had ordered it. It was canceled. It never came out. It was going to come with a Hoth Leia, and it was going to be like the Jabba's Palace or the Cantina 3D set, where you would fold it out and build Echo Base. I cannot find a picture of it anymore. It was only in the Sears catalog, so I don't have a copy of that from 1997. But that would have been the other Hoth Echo Base that we would have gotten to date. So this is the only Echo Base sort of adjacent playset we got, and it is just the Land of the Jawas base with this card drop background. But it really completes out your Battle of Hoth if you're aiming for a big scene. So in that respect, I like it. I'm a fan of it. I love anything cardboard and Kenner, so they always do a great job there. So let's continue along our 1981 and take a look next at the Turret and Probot playset. Where's the box, right? Well, I don't have the box for this one. I've always wanted it, but I don't want to spend like $200 just to get the box. Not a lot of craziness going on. As you can see here, the artwork just has Darth Vader and some snowtroopers, and they would have been better off going with Han Solo and Chewbacca shooting the Probot. I love Probot. If they made 100 Probots, I'd buy 101. So anytime another Probot comes out, I appreciate it. This one, you can see the gun on the front here and a turning head, and then it has the dangling legs. So this was pretty good for the time. The head pops off if you wanted to make it simulate the explosion, but that's really it. Let's take a quick look at the playset here. I'll give you a nice 360. You can see a lot of layers here on this one. There's a lot of peg holes to put a lot of characters on, of course, and then you have that turret as well. So you have a lot of different play elements to this one. You can see the door on the back that's functional. So if you wanted to put somebody inside, but of course what you really want to do is have somebody in the top port and sticking out of the gun there. So going over some of the features, I mean, it's a very small set, but it's still a great play set here. You have this little stand where you can make the character turn back and forth, and it makes the Probot move. And it's actually, there we go, it's supposed to make him pop off and simulate you shooting him, although you're like point blank at this point. But that's cool. They have the pop-up for the probe droid to make him explode off the base, and you can make him kind of like move back and forth if you wanted to bring the character to life. So I really appreciate that. They never really had anything else like that with the Probot, since you just kind of got the figure brought back in the Power of the Force 2 line, and then subsequently brought back a couple other versions and other lines. But this is one of my favorite ones next to that Power of the Force 2 one, because he's got that little missile that comes out of his head and fires. So that's one that's near and dear to my heart as well. So looking at the turret here, this doesn't explode or anything. You could take it off the base. It's supposed to secure with these little tabs, but mine is a little old. It doesn't want to stay put. And there goes the probe droid again. So this will rotate with that great clicking sound. I don't know if you could hear that, but everything Kenner had that turned clicked. So you can see the little gear here, and there's that little fin to make that clicking sound. And then, of course, you can take the top, stick the character in there, so he's poking out of the top, firing. There's no like launching capability here or flame or anything like they added in subsequent sets. So this was just kind of bare bones. And then you got that opening door in the back if you wanted to put a character inside or make it look like a character's coming out of this set. So this is kind of like a outpost, I guess it was designed to be. Or you can move it closer to your Hoth trench and make it one of the sentry turrets there with the pro droid, attacking the rebels like we saw in Shadows of the Empire or in the Rogue Squadron games, where they just expanded on the use of pro droids in those. But that is basically it. This is a small set, not a whole lot here. Literally, it's called Turret and Probot playset, and it's a turret with the Probot. So that is all on this set. All small, I think quite impactful though in your Battle of Hoth, so definitely worth having. So let's transition next to 1982, where we will end our series on the vintage side of things before we get to the modern era. All right, I'm going to end the vintage set with the Rebel Transport. Now, I know some of you are going to complain and say, well, why aren't you doing the AT-AT? Because that was Hoth, and it was a vehicle, but it was also a playset. Well, that one was also recycled into Endor, and it was there as well. I wanted to do something that was uniquely Hoth. You never saw the Rebel Transport anywhere except for on Hoth. Otherwise, it was in space. So I thought this was a great way, at least for the original movies, to bring this back into the as a playset, because it was designed in 1982 as kind of a playset in addition to being a vehicle. But also with the AT-AT, the 1980 version of that, or 81 version of that, was not really a playset. I mean, you could put a couple characters in it, but it didn't have like the Power of the Force one where it had the rope so the character could jump up into the, or pull up into the set. So it didn't have as much dimension to it as the more modern ones do. But either way, that's purely a vehicle. I don't want to start getting into that as a playset. I found this was more appropriate because there are elements of it that you could take apart and turn it to a playset, as you see here on the box, where you could take out the turrets from the inside and whatnot. And it was just, I think, more of a playset than a vehicle, in essence. And it's kind of weird they never made this again. Like, it came out in 1982. I thought it was a pretty great design. They could have made it a little bit bigger and taken it to the vintage collection, but we have never gotten a Rebel Transport again for the 3 3/4 figures. If someone wants to, say I'm wrong, and please include a link in the article, because I do not recall another Rebel Transport being made for 3 3/4 figures. So this was it. This was the one and only. Really like this design they had to it. I think it's pretty cool. So the Rebel Transport here, as you can see, really mimicked the movie. It's even got the engines on there. This is kind of big for me to do a 360, so I apologize. But you got the engines on there in the back, and you got all that great, like, weird design look to it. And the way it opened is it had this kind of locking mechanism where you just kind of pull this out, and then you would just kind of pull up the components here. And if you forgive me, it's a little old, so it's not as cooperative on camera as I would like it to be. But the front would move out, and you'd have this little cockpit here. And then your inside elements would eventually, I guess not. Oh, there we go. Your inside elements would eventually somehow open. There we go. You gotta do it at the clips here. And very gradually maneuver it. These are old, so I don't want to just like snap it apart. But the back panel will come off here, and you have your turrets in the back, and then you would eventually be able to maneuver out the larger part of it, as I struggle with this immensely. There we go. And you'd eventually be able to take out the back part of it. And then the inside, it kind of looked like a figure holder, if you recall the vintage figure holders. And it even had this great bottom to it. So then you had this gangplank that would go down here to allow characters to come up from the bottom as well. So it had a lot of dimension to it as a vehicle. That's why I say it's more of a playset than a vehicle. I mean, it's not a ship that has any weapons on it. You're not going to use it to attack other ships. This portion, or they did add weapons to it internally, could come out and you could use it. There's that great clicking sound again. You could use it as a little base and turret set if you wanted to set up a defensive perimeter. But that was it. The only guns they had were all internal to it. And then you had the cockpit here in the front, and that's really it. Underneath the cockpit, it opened up, and you had like survival packs and the gas mask that you saw them wear, or the air mask that you saw them wear in the Exogorth part of the movie. But that was all that was in there, just some survival accessories. But this, like I said, I think it's more of a playset than it was a vehicle, because it's just meant to be on the ground flying. It's no fun when it's being used in the like a space battle scenario. So that was basically it for vintage. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of videos. There's vehicles, there's mini rigs, there's creatures, but I'm focusing on playsets here for Hoth. And that was it for the vintage side of things. And that's not bad. I mean, that's 5 playsets. That's a lot. We get a lot of Hoth love back in the day. It's one of my favorite segments of all of Star Wars was the Battle of Hoth. So that's pretty great. But let's move on to the 90s now with the Power of the Force 2 collection. And we'll switch gears and look at our playset there. Okay, so it's 1997, and we got a Hoth playset in the Power of the Force 2 line. Going to show you this one on a box 360 because it's standing up. It's actually brand new. It's unopened, so we're going to be doing an unboxing here as well. Picked this up for about $30 at a comic shop. It was $15 back in the day, as you can see from the Toys R Us label here. So, you know, mimicking the old style of Kenner, it has the characters in an action scene on the front of the box. And what you see more with when Hasbro started getting into the line is they threw in like fake snow and other elements around to sort of fill out the scenery. But the background is more pulling in from the card back at the time, which was the green saber and not the red saber on the card back there. But you could see a couple of the characters that they had. They didn't have a whole lot in line at the time. They just came out with the Hoth Rebel Soldier, and I think they had the AT-AT driver too, just thereabouts in the time frame. So there weren't a whole lot of characters. Of course, that Luke on the front there, you can see is Snowspeeder pilot, not a X-Wing pilot as he was labeled, because he had the gray gloves and the outfit there that was more reminiscent of his time in the Snowspeeder. And then you did have Han Hoth. He came out around that time. He was in the second wave in 97 or in 96. So he was pretty cool. One of my favorite figures in that wave as well. And R2 is just R2. We didn't get a new R2 for quite a while in the Power of the Force 2 line. But why don't we crack open into this thing and check out all the features here. It's been a while. I used to have one of these and I sold it a while ago to clear out a lot of my Power of the Force stuff to make room for some vintage collection and just all my old school vintage figures. So let's check. It's been a while. I can't remember what's in this box, honestly, in terms of how it was laid out. So it was pretty much cardboard. And then we have our instructions here, or our assembly for the Power of the Force 2. I don't think it's too difficult. I pretty much remember how this was laid out. You know, it's funny because now we're in plastic-free packaging and everything's wrapped in this tissue paper, but it was back in 1997 as well. So this is a plastic-free packaging ahead of its time. So that's pretty cool that they did this back then, and then there's just sort of reminiscent of that again. So people are asking, why is Hasbro doing this? Well, they did it before. I mean, there's nothing new going on here. This is just how it used to be. So here is the part of the tower. You can immediately tell this is way smaller than the Vintage Collection tower. This is totally different scale almost. It's much, much smaller than that larger one. So it's going to be harder for a figure to fit inside. So we have a couple of elements here. And of course, this is the 90s. And like I told you guys before, we loved firing missiles in the 90s. This was a huge component of the 90s. So this would go in and and fire out. So this is going to mount here. This is going to be like a defense-based cannon mounted here. So it was just a thing in the 90s. Everything had a chute for some reason, like every toy you had. So they kept that consistent here. We got over here is a fun aspect that was not in any of the vintage collection, or I guess just vintage, not going to say vintage collection, vintage playsets, was the shield generator. So this one would go on here, and it would come in 3 pieces, and basically you'd hit this button and it would explode, giving you the action from the movie. So that was kind of cool that they did make that, although it's much, much smaller in scale than it would be. I mean, this is roughly the size of a character, whereas in the movie it was like the size of an entire playset. So this is a little bit artistic choice, I think, was given here to how this shield generator was laid out, is a much, much smaller element. And I get they wanted to fit it on here because it would be like this big or bigger, way, way, way bigger if you wanted to do it in the proper scale. But they'd have to make it much bigger to be able to sell that aspect of it. So here's the other base. And again, you get this great trench here. So these actually connect, and I'll give you a little close-up. The wire here wraps all the way around and connects to this other wire. So you can see that these two are meant to be displayed side by side, but you could spread them out and make a much bigger playset. Actually, if you brought like 3 or 4 of these, you know, absent the shield generator, you could have a bigger trench, which would have been pretty cool. So the only other part in here is the rest of the little turret. So I'll get rid of this. So this turret is a little more functional than the other turret. So the door just clips on here. There we go. So again, it has the door, just like the other one did. And then this one should stay a little bit better together than the other one did, just because the tabs are a little bit newer and they're not worn. So let's see if it clicks in. Yeah, that seems to be a little bit better than the other one. So this one is not going to spin or anything. It's not really meant to spin. But the top of the turret has this little laser blaster on here, and this shoots out. Now this isn't like a missile or anything, it's just a weird little vinyl piece of flame meant to simulate the after effect of the blaster. So this just mounts on top here, and now this part can turn, but the base itself isn't going to turn. It's meant to be locked into position basically. So that is it. So the door is still on there if you wanted to go in. It's going to be a lot tighter for the character, but the character's head could poke through. So as the bottom of the other one had like a seat here for the character to sit in, this one could actually stand and poke his little head out and say hello as he's firing at Imperials. So that is the difference here in the play elements. Again, they brought these crates back that they had in the older sets in the 81 and 82, but there's no functionality to them. You don't push it and anything explodes. For this one, there's a lever in the back, and then there's the button here on the top, obviously, for making this explode here. But this is this play set, and I'll give you a little close-up here. You could see a lot of nice detail on it. They had, of course, on the inside, again, there's all the little footsteps. They kept that consistent because it's snow. You're going to leave little boot steps. But they have some, like, little dark coloring in here to the effects of carbonizing from the blaster fire or whatnot. So just a lot of different coloring around on this. It's not pure white like we saw on the Kenner sets. So a little different there. But I still like it. It's a nice little mold. It's a sturdy plastic, even though it's hollow. It doesn't feel like it's going to crumble, and it will stand the test of time. But yeah, this was the 97 set. This was pretty great. This is actually the last Hoth playset we got. I'm sorry, but there is nothing after this. In 2007, the 30th anniversary collection, they brought back a turret, and I think it's slightly larger than this. It's pretty much a proper size turret, and that set came with an ATST. You could see it right here. I'll give you a picture of it. I don't have it. It's pretty pricey if you wanted to get it right now, probably around somewhere between $180 to $200 on the secondary market. This was a Target exclusive. So this came with a bunch of figures. It was called the Battle of Hoth. So I would have showed you guys this one too if I had it. But this, again, it wasn't a play set, but it was, it was the turret, which is part of a play set, and it was the ATST that accompanied it. So that was more, I would say, play set adjacent than anything else I could think of. I mentioned just a couple minutes ago earlier in the video that there was a planned 97 I believe was the year, a planned 3D playset, which was going to be Echo Base, and it was going to have Leia Hoth. And this was before Leia Hoth came out in the line, so this would have been our first chance to get her. They did that with the Sand Trooper and the Han and the Melted Carbonite and the Jabba Palace set. So those sets kind of give you different figures that you hadn't gotten previously. So they canceled it, and then Leia Hoth came out subsequently as a figure later on. That would have been really, really cool. I wish I could just find a picture of it to show you guys. I remember just some of the elements. It was more of just like an open display of the hangar. And I can't recall what else they had in it, but I can't find any pictures of it anymore. It's like it's erased from existence. It was, this was right around the dawn of the internet, so it probably wasn't anywhere. It was in a Sears catalog. You could order it at the time. They used to have this toy catalog that came out every year, and they had a ton of great Star Wars stuff in it as well. So that is lost to time, but that was a unreleased set that was going to come out. Would have been great because we have not gotten the Echo Base since then. So we need some kind of Echo Base playset. It would be great to incorporate some of the elements like the Luke and Bacta tank that we had that came out. I can't recall if that was one of the Saga sets, but he came in a little Bacta tank. That'd be nice if we could fit that in there, or if that was in there. But just to sort of round out all the characters we have to put into a set like that, or just to get another Hoth set, bring some of this stuff back, because it's been since 2007 that we get any real like playset elements. So that's a pretty long time. We're coming up on 16 years. So I think we're overdue for another Hoth playset. Or just some kind of Hoth related element. Now, yeah, we did get a bigger AT-AT, and that's probably getting into playset territory now, or they're right-sizing that, but it's not really a playset. It's not a real like battle element where they have some different features to it like these things do. So, yeah, it's not in that category for me. So we need something. Hopefully we'll get something soon. We got a lot of great characters that fit into all this, but we just don't have any way to engage them or display them into a nice setting, unless we make up our own elements and just putting a whole bunch of fake snow down. But it'd be great if they brought back some of these old style buildable sets. Like I think modular is the way to go. It's the way of the future. We've seen that with the Tantive 4 set. We saw that with the Cloud City set, and I recommended it again for the Death Star set. If we got little bits like this, and we could buy more and more, like they're doing with the Jabba's Palace set, we're getting our second part of that now in the Vintage Collection. We could build out our own Hoth set if we just get little modular bits of Echo Base, or of turrets, or of whatnot, and trenches, and put a character with them. And then we, if they sold this, I could buy like 4 of it and set up a whole trench with characters and turrets. Not too difficult to do, and it would get people building out sets, as many as they wanted, and it would be more cost effective to do a smaller set than a massive $200 Hoth set or something like that. So I think modular is the way to go. It would allow us to get more elements like this of different kinds for different mediums, be it Endor or Jabba's Palace like they're doing, or the Death Star, I'll plug that again, or Hoth in this instance. But that is it for our Hoth playsets, unfortunately. Hope you guys enjoyed this segment. I like doing these, taking a deep dive on these playsets and what they mean in terms of collecting and what's inspiring them. No Land of the Jawas here. You guys notice this is all fresh cut on this one. But that's all for this time. Next month, I'll be taking a look at building out the barge. What characters that are out there that are from the scene of Jabba's sail barge. So if you had a barge, we'll show you how to fill that up with the most recent characters and the skiffs as well, and maybe some of the little additional elements. And then we have a couple more surprises in store in future months, so I don't want to spoil those. But this is Hoth. I hope this is keeping you warm on this cold month of having these warm, fond memories of these old playsets. And keep tuning in, like, subscribe, and follow for more on Rebelscum. And we'll see you next time, you Rebel Scum.